I used to think love was mostly logistics. You pick a city, you pick a lease, you buy the good skillet once and stop arguing about eggs. I didn't think you could mistake a heist for a marriage until I watched my own life get turned into a stack of exhibits for someone else's happily ever after filing. I'm Daniel, 36. I run ops for a logistics startup in Chicago, which basically means if a truck is late somewhere in Indiana, my phone gets to learn new cuss words. We're in West Loop, near a coffee place that charges extra for the pleasure of being seen waiting. I met Maya on a rainy Thursday under the blue line. She was carrying a violin case and wearing a red coat like she had invented the color. She asked me, in an accent that made the whole platform lean closer, if the train stopped at Clark Lake or if she was on the wrong one. I said yes and offered to walk her to the transfer. She laughed and said, "You're very American about directions," and then told me she'd moved here 2 months ago on a work visa to play with a chamber ensemble that mostly did weddings and donor galas. We built a life fast because that is how cities dare you to do it. Foo! On Tuesdays, movies where the score made her whisper, "They're doing too much." My kitchen learned how to host someone's hands besides mine. She taught me to hear what a room sounds like when violinists tune. I taught her the Midwestern art of pretending the weather isn't a personal attack. 6 months in, the visa clock started ticking in conversations the way a squeaky belt starts ticking in a car. Her ensemble lost its sponsor. COVID had chewed up the freelance scene before we met and spit it back out meaner. She had a letter from an immigration lawyer named Victor who said he could restructure her status if she found stability. She folded the letter into fourths and stared at it like a fortune cookie that might also be a grenade. "I don't want math," she said one night, curled into my side on the couch. "I want to play and buy oranges and learn to like baseball because you've decided it's a metaphor. I don't want to play Visa chess." "We could get married," I said, and the sentence came out of me like it already belonged to the room. We talked around it. My sister had asked when I was going to stop practicing adulthood and actually do it. Maya's eyebrows did that dance where one goes up as if interrogating the other. "You're sure?" she asked. "You don't rescue people, Daniel." "I pick people," I said. "I'm picking you." We did City Hall in January with wet boots and 2 friends for witnesses and a lunch after at Lula that made my mother cry when she saw the photos because the cake looked like love, even if it didn't taste like hers. Maya wore the red coat and a smile like it had been tuned. I wore the suit I own for funerals and days that need gravity. We took a cab to Victor's office 2 weeks later with a folder full of photos and joint account paperwork and the kind of nervous optimism you can build a religion on if you're careless. Victor looked like a person who has learned to wear kindness the way other men wear ties. He had a wall of frames and a printer that sounded expensive. "Marriage-based adjustment is straightforward when people are who they say they are," he said. "You'll compile evidence, you'll attend an interview, someone will look at your story and decide it's real. Be prepared to be offended by how intimate it gets." He smiled like intimacy had never offended him in his life. "You'll need affidavits from friends, joint bills, lease, joint insurance if possible, photos with family. The usual." We did the usual with a vengeance. My sister wrote an affidavit that sounded like a sitcom pitch. She included the detail about Maya hating my favorite hoodie because it shed and therefore attacked her instrument. Our landlord rolled his eyes but added her to the lease. We put her on my health plan. I loved that, the practical tenderness of it. My HR portal asked, "Relationship to dependent," and I clicked "spouse" and felt something old and scared in me unclench. The first odd thing I didn't recognize as an odd thing because I was busy being in love and feeling useful. Maya started collecting paperwork with professional zeal, not romantic energy. She set up a shared Google Drive and labeled folders like a paralegal: utilities, lease, photos, mail, affidavits, tax. She made a spreadsheet of touch points, places where our names needed to co-appear, and she built a cadence. "Tuesday we call the bank for the credit card," she'd say, sliding a coffee across the table like a bribe to the universe. "Thursday we do pictures with your parents." She made me take photos holding a rental receipt because the officer needs to see you live a life that can be boring. I laughed and kissed the top of her head and let her pose me with our garbage can. Victor had us do a mock interview where he asked me how we met, which side of the bed Maya sleeps on, what brand of shampoo she uses, whether she snores, what her favorite breakfast is, who does laundry. It felt ridiculous, and it also felt like a test I badly wanted to ace. Maya answered with ease. She knew the silly facts, that I fold towels wrong, that I refuse to buy fake maple syrup, that I call my sister Sunday evenings at 7 if she hasn't called me first. Victor nodded and made notes and after said, "You'd be surprised how many couples forget the easy things under fluorescent lights." The second odd thing, Victor started texting Maya. At first, it made sense. Immigration is a bureaucracy that thinks email is for recipes. He asked for scans. He asked for clarifications. Then, the texts were at night. "How's the packet going?" "Saw this new RFE's trend? Let's prep. You're very organized. This will go well." His tone walked the line between professional and friendly, like a man with good shoes walks city slush. Maya smiled at her phone a little more, the way people smile at good news they haven't decided how to narrate yet. I'm not the jealous type. I hate how proud that sentence makes me feel and how much I wanted to wear it like armor. I asked once, "Is Victor texting late a normal lawyer thing?" "He's not billing," she said. "He's easing my mind. Let him ease." I let him ease. 2 months before the interview, Maya started a new habit, collecting my bad days, not fixing them. If I came home exhausted and slammed a drawer too hard and said something like, "I swear, if we don't hire a second shift manager, I'm going to spontaneously become a solution," she would study me the way she studies sheet music. "Tell me more," she'd say, gentle. "What makes you feel trapped at work?" I talked because I'm a Midwestern man with feelings that get expressed through grocery opinions and sudden monologues when invited. She started writing down dates. "When did you start clenching your jaw?" she asked once, teasing. "When did you stop sleeping?" I kissed her fingers to shut her up and said, "God, who knows?" and thought she was just applauding herself for being good at intimacy. One night, I found a note on her desk that made my stomach tilt. At the top, she'd written, "Incidents." Under it, lines like, 3, 4. Daniel raised voice about work. 3:112 door slammed. Frustration. 3:21 insomnia. Irritability. 3:29 argument about budget. It was the kind of list a therapist might make to track a pattern. It also read like the beginning of a bad story about me. "What's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice in the register where jokes live. She didn't flinch. "Victor says it's good to document stress," she said. "Sometimes officers ask if there are tensions. Of course there are. We're real. We don't need to pretend to be a brochure." I wanted to say, I don't want to hand a man a list of the worst version of me and hope he's literate enough to know it's normal. I also wanted to be a good partner to a woman whose life is one interview away from either a green card or a plane ticket. So I said, "Okay," and put the note back down with the kind of care you give to things that might explode. The third odd thing announced itself with police lights. A patrol car parked outside our building on a Friday night while we were watching a cooking show where a judge used the word mouthfeel too many times. There was a knock. I assumed drunk neighbor. The cop at our door had a face like a permission slip. "We got a call," he said. "Noise complaint and possible domestic disturbance." He looked over my shoulder at our very boring living room and the stovetop popcorn we'd made like a couple who follows directions. "We're okay," I said, baffled. "It's just us and Alton Brown." Maya stepped into the doorway with the posture of a woman who understands how to be the thing a camera wants. "Everything is fine," she said. "We were a bit loud with the television. I'm sorry. Chicago is very close." The cop took our names, asked if anyone was hurt, asked if anyone wanted to leave. Nobody did. He put a little card on our credenza that said in officer font, "You are not alone." When he left, I laughed. "Someone hates popcorn," I said. Maya didn't laugh. She stood very still and looked at the card like it had printed its way into our home uninvited. "This is good," she said finally, quiet. "They have a record now if they ask." "If who asks?" "USCIS," she said. "It shows we aren't performing, that life is loud sometimes and yet we're fine." I stared at her. "Are we inviting cops to help with the vibe?" I asked, too gentle for the question. She blinked like she hadn't realized she'd said the quiet part. "No, I just mean, it happens. It's good to have paper." I woke up at 3 and couldn't get back to sleep. I went to the kitchen for water and found the incident list on the table with a new line. 4A8 police called noise. Evidence card. The handwriting was neat. It looked like music. I started to read more things in rooms after that. Victor texted her on a Sunday at 11:41 p.m. "When you feel unsafe, call non-emergency. Paper matters," she replied with a heart. I flipped my phone over and looked at the ceiling and wondered what it says about me that I stayed so still. 2 weeks later, the violin case vanished. Not lost, sold. Maya announced it like a scientist announcing a hypothesis. I sold the old case, she said, breezy. The fundraiser paid for a new one. I'm not sentimental. I checked our shared account and saw the deposit. I also saw 2 withdrawals I didn't recognize labeled MoneyGram and Western Union, $450, $300. I asked. I sent money home, she said, my cousin dentist bill. She looked at me like I was being very American about questions again. It's fine, she said. You don't need to teach me about scams. I know my family. I made a note to myself in the app that tracks small, uneasy things. Money wires. Victor. Incident list. Friendly cop. We had our interview date, 10 a.m., downtown, a building where Hope buys a ticket and waits. Victor coached us the night before. Answer what is asked, he said. Don't tell a story unless you're invited. Be warm. Be yourselves. Bring a photo album. Given recent trends, be prepared for a Stokes interview. He explained Stokes like a man who uses it often. Separate rooms, they'll ask each of you the same small questions. They look for differences. What color is her toothbrush? Which side of the bed? Where do you keep the laundry detergent? It's demeaning. Do not take the bait of showing your offense. I slept terribly. Maya slept like a person who had given a test its answer key. We were called by an officer whose name I remember because men who make you nervous stamp their names on your brain. He was polite. He flipped through the file. He asked, "How did you meet?" And we both smiled and told the train story like it was still raining. He nodded at the photos. He nodded at the lease. He nodded at the joint bills. He asked if either of us had a criminal record, any prior marriages, any children. He asked if we had ever been arrested. We said no. He was halfway through the polite list when another officer opened the door and handed him a folder. He skimmed. He looked up at Maya. "Ma'am," he said, voice unchanged, "do you feel safe at home?" Maya's composure flickered, like a candle in a draft. She looked at me. She looked at Victor. Then she did something I will replay at 3 a.m. for the rest of my life. She let her eyes fill and said, "Sometimes he's loud." The officer nodded like he'd been handed a spoon he expected. "Do you want to proceed with a Stokes interview?" he asked, not looking at me. "Or would you prefer to step out and talk to our VAWA liaison?" I knew the acronym because my sister works in social services, Violence Against Women Act. It allows a non-citizen spouse who is abused to self-petition for status without the citizen spouse. It's a good law for bad men. It's a bad weapon for good ones. Victor cleared his throat. "We are prepared for a standard interview," he said carefully. "My client is safe." The officer looked at Maya. "Mayam," he said again, gentler. "You don't need his consent to talk to us." Maya wiped her eyes and shook her head. "We're fine," she said in a small voice that still somehow sounded like the intended key. "He is stressed. Immigration is hard." I sat there feeling like I had crashed a car I wasn't driving. The officer made a note. We did the Stokes, separate rooms. A woman with a bun asked me where the detergent is, under the sink, whether we have rugs in the bedroom. No, she hates them because they catch rosin. Which side of the bed she sleeps on, left, closest to the window. Whether she drinks coffee, yes, with cardamom if she's showing off. What color her toothbrush is, white. Whether my shower has a liner or just the curtain liner. I installed it angry because the curtain liner. I installed it angry because the rod fell and it felt like a metaphor. When we left, Maya was quiet. Victor walked us to the elevator and said, "They will either approve or they will issue a request for evidence. If they suspect fraud or abuse, they can separate the petitions. It's fine, it's not fine, it's process." In the Uber, I said too carefully, "What was that?" She looked out the window and let the city blur. "Victor says officers sometimes test women," she said. "They see if you'll fold." I didn't fold. "I watched you crease," I said, more sharply than I meant. She flinched like the car hit a pothole. "You're making this ugly," she said. "I wanted to be honest. You get angry, you slam doors. You do. You just do." "You started a list," I said, "of my humanity." She didn't answer. She put her head on the window. The city made train noises at us like a soundtrack that didn't pay union rates. 2 days later, a letter arrived. It was a request for evidence for additional bona fides and clarification re household dynamics. It asked for more photos, more joint stuff, more affidavits and documentation concerning any police reports, wellness checks, or social service contacts. It did not say the word abuse. It didn't need to. Maya went into project mode like a person who knows how to scale a panic. She scheduled a couples counseling intake. "To show we are serious," she said. She arranged for our friend Lucia to write a second affidavit. This one talked about our fights and how we repair well. She asked my sister to write a supplemental letter that mentioned Daniel working on communication. My sister called me and said, "Do you want me to lie?" I said, use adverbs sparingly, and she said, use adverbs sparingly, and she said, that's a yes. That weekend, while she was at a rehearsal, I opened the incidents note on her desk and took photos because my hands sometimes understand time better than my brain. Then I did a thing I hated myself for doing and also would do again. I used her laptop while she was out, not to snoop, to copy the Google Drive in case later needed it. In the process, a WhatsApp notification popped up on the corner of her screen. Victor, remember, if you ever feel unsafe, text me. I will handle the filing. Don't let his citizenship bully you. Then another, Victor, also bring the incident list Monday. The officer will want dates. My heart did a slow, stupid thing. It didn't race, it sank. I clicked WhatsApp like a man tapping a plate he knows is hot. The chat was professional on the surface. It had long paragraphs about process. It also had a subtext that made me feel like I had missed a room being built inside my life. Reminders to contemporaneously document, suggestions to seek a wellness check when he has escalated, a link to a domestic violence resources page, and 2 weeks earlier, a photo from Maya to Victor of the cop car that had landed on our credenza. He had replied with a thumbs up and good. I didn't see anything sexual. No hearts, no late night, miss your face, no hotel confirmations. What I saw was worse for a man like me, a strategy. When she came home, I was washing dishes like they had done something wrong. She kissed my neck, then paused in that way people do when the air is different. What? She said. Are you building a VAWA case? I asked, and the sentence felt like pushing a piano alone. Her face did 3 things in a second: shock, calculation, performance. She chose performance. That's cruel, she said. You're cruel. I want us to be safe. I want us to be approved. Victor says sometimes officers look for signs that women are silenced, and I don't want to be silent. Victor also says, call the cops when the TV is loud, I said. Victor says, write down when I'm tired. Victor says, stack paper until you're ready to not need me. She set the grocery bag down too hard, and a lemon rolled across the counter like a period at the end of a sentence I didn't finish. If I wanted to not need you, she said, low, I would not have married you. If you wanted to need me, I said, lower, you would not be practicing how to leave. We didn't talk for the rest of the night. She slept on the couch. I sat in the dark kitchen with the incident list in my lap and thought about what it means to be a man who believes in paper, in a house where paper is being taught new tricks. On Monday, Maya went to counseling. I went to my sister's and held my nephew and let his small hand flatten my shirt in a way that convinced me I could still be made honest by touch. My sister said, do you want to come back here in 6 months and tell me you ignored the part where she showed you the knife? I said, she's not a villain. My sister said, you don't have to be a villain to use a knife. On Wednesday, a package arrived addressed to Maya from a firm I didn't recognize. She put it under the bed like people put photos of high school hair. While she was in the shower, I took it out. Inside, a brochure titled, Your Rights Under VAWA, a checklist, and a template declaration with blanks like, Mad Libs, my spouse Daniel, has exhibited the following abusive behaviors. He has isolated me by, he has controlled finances by, he has threatened me by, he has threatened me by, he has threatened me by. There was also a second sheet. If your spouse is a danger, consider the following protective steps. One of them was, apply for an order of protection. Another, create a safety plan, identify friends' houses where you can stay. I put the papers back in the envelope and back under the bed, and then I did something I am not proud of and also refuse to be ashamed of. I opened the camera app on my phone, set it to time-lapse, and tucked it between the cookbooks on the kitchen shelf pointed at the front door in the living room. Not because I wanted to catch her in a lie, because if a wellness check turned into an arrest, because I refused to answer a question loudly enough, I wanted the room to have a memory not filtered through anyone else's story. That night, she asked me if I'd be home Friday or if I had drinks with the team. I said I had a one-on-one late and might be home after 6. She nodded like a plan had clicked. She left her phone face down for the first time since we moved in. Friday at 40:40, she texted, "Can you pick up wine? I'm making stew." I said, "Sure." At 5005, I got a second text. "Never mind on stew. I'm not hungry. Just come home." That was odd. Maya cooks when she needs to calm down. I started to type how about ramen and stopped because I didn't want to leave anything in ink with a timestamp that could be turned into intent. When I walked in at 5004-2, the apartment was staged like it wanted to be an anecdote. The coffee table was on its side. A picture frame lay face down on the rug. The corner of a cushion had been unzipped so stuffing bulged like a fake wound. Maya sat on the floor, palms flat, breathing like she'd practiced hyperventilating. There was a small purple shadow on her forearm that wasn't there yesterday and could have been from a cabinet, a post, a bottle. "What happened?" I asked, careful, like the room was a witness wearing a wire. She looked at me like a person playing a role and forgetting her lines. "You were late," she said. "You were angry." "I wasn't here," I said. What is this?" She stared at me and at the door and at her phone. Then a knock, polite, then official. "Chicago Police," a voice said. Same cadence as last time, different timbre. She held my eyes for a beat like she was choosing between doors, then stood and smoothed her shirt and wiped at cheeks that had no tears yet. I felt my phone in my pocket humming with the time-lapse notification like a heart I'd outsourced. When I opened the door, a female officer stood there with a clipboard and a look that could have been concern or training. "We got a call," she said. "Neighbor heard yelling. Everything okay?" Maya stepped forward, smaller than the room remembered. "He threw the table," she said, voice flat. Not loud, not crying, just declarative in a way that sounded like a statement she'd practiced not to qualify. "He's been escalating." The officer's eyes flicked to me. There are moments when a life flips a coin. This was one. I could argue, I could righteous. I could say, I have a recording like a man who thinks his phone can baptize him. Or I could do the one thing my sister would tell me to do if she were standing here holding her baby like a lit fuse. I could not turn this into a physics demonstration. "I'd like to show you something," I said to the officer, keeping my voice in the register that works for tired managers and men who don't want handcuffs. "It will take 10 seconds to set up. It's a time lapse of the past 2 hours. If it shows me flipping a table, I will get in your car." The officer blinked. "That's oddly specific." "I run ops," I said. "I prefer nouns to adjectives." She looked at Maya. "Mom," she said soft, "you okay with him showing me?" Maya hesitated, then nodded because saying no would be suspicious, and this was not the version of the story she wanted to tell. I played the clip. It was boring for 90 seconds because time-lapse does that, makes nothing feel like art. Then it showed Maya moving the coffee table by herself with the care you give to things you plan to photograph. It showed her opening the cushion and pulling out a fist of stuffing like a magician extracting doves. It showed her sitting on the floor, looking at the door, practicing breathing. It showed the room stay quiet except for our plant trying to decide if this was its last day. The officer watched. Her mouth did that tiny tilt people do when they see a magic trick they didn't buy a ticket for. "Okay," she said, neutral. "Okay." Maya closed her eyes. For half a second, everything paused, the way orchestras pause before the down bow. Then she opened them and chose a different piece of music. "He scares me," she said softly, and I felt a version of myself step into a space he hadn't earned. Even when he doesn't do things, he can be very big. "I'm 6 feet," I said to the air, "because humor is a habit I'm trying to break." The officer nodded again, bureaucratic compassion. "We're going to separate you tonight," she said, "just to let things cool. Sir, can you go to a friend's? Ma'am, you can stay here. If either of you needs a protective order, the courthouse is open Monday." I nodded. "I can go to my sister's." I started packing a bag. Maya watched, arms wrapped around her ribs like they were the only arms she trusted. As I zipped the bag, a text appeared from an unknown number. "We can file Monday. Don't let him bully." V. It was Victor. Of course it was. Not to my phone, hers. She had left her phone on the armrest. The preview lit the room. Maya saw me see it. Her chin lifted in defiance and in something that looked like relief. "I will be safe," she said, and for the first time I believed her sentence had nothing to do with the part of me that loved her. I left with my bag and the time-lapse copied to 3 places, and the feeling you get when a bridge you've been driving on every day turns out to be 2 planks and hope. On my sister's couch, under a blanket that smells like goldfish and detergent, I wrote down everything I could remember from the past month in bullet points, because bullets are how I stop my heart from shooting itself in the foot. Saturday morning, I called a lawyer who doesn't smile in photos. Family and immigration crossover. He listened and then said the sentence that made the world rearrange into a different blueprint. "Your wife may be preparing a VAWA self-petition based on fabricated abuse to separate her case from yours. Do not confront, do not text, do not go home alone. Do document. We will respond with facts and with a petition for exclusive possession of the apartment pending adjudication. Also, email USCIS through counsel noting your willingness to participate and providing evidence of fabrication. You're not trying to torpedo her status, you're trying to remove yourself from the lie." What happens to her? I asked, hating that I still cared and proud that I did. What happens to her is the government's problem, he said. What happens to you is mine, for now. He told me to pull our bank records, our camera clips, the cop card, the incident list photos, the WhatsApp screenshots with Victor's good. He told me to stop acting like a husband and start acting like a witness. He told me not to become a headline by losing my temper. At noon, my phone buzzed with an email from Victor to both of us. Given recent household tensions, I advised Maya to proceed with a VAWA self-petition to protect her status. Daniel, this is not an indictment of your character, it's a legal strategy. Please refrain from contacting her except via counsel. He had CC'd an associate whose signature block contained the word advocate 4 times. I typed 3 drafts of a response. I sent none of them. I forwarded it to my lawyer and my sister, and then I went for a walk by the lake where the wind is rude and cleansing. A runner in a neon jacket almost collided with me and said, "Sorry, man, like that solves Chicago." I said, "It's okay," and surprised myself by meaning it. Fish have to keep moving or they drown. People too, sometimes. When I came back, my lawyer had already filed an emergency motion to keep me in the apartment and her out pending a hearing. He had also sent a letter to USCIS attaching the time-lapse, redacted for everything but the important motion, and offering to appear for a sworn statement if they wanted to hear it without the vibe. He used phrases like good faith petitioner, bad faith fabrication, and protective perjury. He told me to expect a call from a fraud detection unit because the government sometimes remembers it has one. By evening, my phone clanged with a number I didn't recognize. A woman introduced herself as an officer from USCIS's Fraud Detection and National Security Unit. Polite, professional. She asked if I'd be willing to come in Monday with counsel to provide a statement. I said yes. She asked if I felt safe. I said yes. She asked if I had any footage. I said yes. She asked if I wanted to withdraw our joint petition. I looked at the ceiling of my sister's living room where a glow-in-the-dark star from my nephew's pack adhered itself over the couch and said, "I don't want to lie on paper. If they can decouple her case from mine without me signing up to be her villain, do it. If not, withdraw." She said, "Understood," like a word that has a job. I slept a weird sleep that night, the kind where your brain runs rehearsals and fails to stick the ending. In the morning, I woke up into a version of my life I didn't recognize and also felt designed for. Lists, evidence, talking like a person who has learned how to keep adjectives out of rooms where nouns will do. The last text I got from Maya before we went full counsel was at 7,001 TAM. "I will be okay." I typed and erased 3 responses. Then I put my phone face down and went to make pancakes for my nephew because children have a way of giving the day a verb that is not fight or file. That was the morning I understood this wasn't going to be an argument I could win in a kitchen. This was going to be a performance graded by people who have seen every version of it staged badly. I wasn't going to yell louder. I was going to speak clearer. I wasn't going to catch her in a lie for my satisfaction. I was going to build a record that spoke even if my voice shook. And I was going to learn the difference between loving someone and letting them write my name into a script they sold to a government like a ticket to freedom. The hearing is in 3 days. Victor will be there with his frames and his printer voice. Maya will be there in a blouse that makes judges pity you. I'll be there with a lawyer who doesn't smile and a clip on my phone that shows a coffee table learning to lie. I don't know yet who walks out with the apartment or what kind of story the government decides to buy. I know this, whatever happens, I am done being inventory in someone else's petition. If you've read this far and you're tempted to tell me I should have seen it under the blue line the first day when she said I was very American about directions, maybe you're right. But I will never apologize for believing that a red coat in the rain might mean something other than paperwork. I still believe that. I just believe in cameras now too. The judge in room 3007 looked like a woman who has seen every version of a bad month turned into emotion. No robe theatrics, just a sharp bob, a legal pad, and the kind of listening that makes you wish you'd edited more. Victor sat with Maya 3 chairs away, spectacles in hand like punctuation. My lawyer, Carp, arranged our pile into a spine. The time-lapse clip on a USB, the cop card, the WhatsApp screenshots, bank statements, the RFE letter, and a simple, boring affidavit that said, "What happened," without adjectives. "Petition for exclusive possession, emergency," the clerk called. We stood. The judge nodded at Carp. "You contend fabrication." "Your Honor, we contend facts," Carp said, voice like sanded wood. He clicked play. 90 seconds of nothing until the coffee table learned to be evidence. The cushion, the handful of stuffing, the rehearsal breathing. The judge's face didn't change, her pen stopped. Victor stood when the clip ended as if it were his cue. "Context, Your Honor," he began, velvet. "A young immigrant spouse." "Mr. Stoyanov," the judge cut, not unkind, "do not try to sell me a poem about process." He recalibrated. There has been stress. There was a later argument. My client perceived danger. She sought counsel. She is not a liar. She is someone in a case with documented staging, the judge finished calmly. She turned to Maya. "Ms. Kovacs, do you wish to amend or withdraw your petition for an order of protection?" Maya held her hands together like she was praying to a god who took notes. "I felt unsafe in my body," she said. "Quiet. That is true." She glanced at Victor. "But the table, that was unwise. I withdraw." The judge watched her a moment longer, then nodded and wrote in the looping hand of someone who has been writing other people's consequences for 20 years. "Emergency exclusive possession to Mr. Adler for 30 days pending status," she said. "No contact order mutual for 14 days. Counsel will coordinate property retrieval. Ms. Kovacs, you will not return to the residence unescorted. Mr. Adler, you will not contact her except through counsel. There will be no internet subtext. I do not read Instagram, but my clerks do." A flicker of almost laughter in the back. It died quickly because the room was made of stone and the kind of air that pushes on your ribs. She tapped the file. "And let me be clear, I make no immigration findings today. That's another building. But in this building, we tell the truth first." Motion granted. We rode the elevator down in silence, Victor rehearsing indignation in his reflection. At security, he put a hand on the rail and said to my lawyer without looking at me, "This will not help him with USCIS." Karp smiled in a way that didn't show teeth. "Nor you," he said. USCIS's Fraud Detection Office met us in a conference room with carpet that smelled like budget and machinery that smelled like permanence. The officer introduced herself as Harper No First Name and thanked me for bringing the clip. Karp spoke gently, not performing for anyone. "My client isn't seeking to torpedo his spouse's status. He is seeking to be unhooked from a lie." Harper wrote those words down exactly. She listened to my narrative the way engineers listen to a hum in a motorhead, slightly canted, one finger on the page. "Did you ever threaten to withdraw the I-130 to coerce her?" she asked. "No," I said. "I didn't know that sentence until this week." "Did you ever discuss VAW with her?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "After the interview, she said they asked. I said it's a good law, not a permission slip." "Did you ever call the police prior to the staged event?" "No." She nodded, clicked the file closed. "We will issue separate notices on the joint petition," she said. "If she self-petitions under VAWA, that is confidential to her. You won't see it. But your evidence of fabrication is relevant to the joint filing. Thank you for coming." Then, after a beat that felt human, "Please keep the mutual, no contact. These cases bend men into shapes that don't flatter them." I moved back into the apartment with the sick feeling of walking through a set after the actors have gone home. The table stood upright again. The cushion had been zipped, but the seam puffed slightly like it had an opinion. I taped the no contact to the fridge because it is easier to obey a rule that is a thing you can touch. The next week was logistics with feelings. A property exchange where Maya stood in the hall with two officers while my sister loaded her violin and clothes into a rideshare, an email from the building about FOBs deactivated, a note from HR confirming her removal from my plan, signed with the kind of apology corporations have perfected. She'd left a small plant on the windowsill, a peace lily that bowed like it knew too much. I moved it to the bathroom because some things are happier with steam. The RFE deadline ticked closer while Karp and I built a response that said we would not be responding. He attached the time-lapse, the withdrawal of her petition for an order of protection, the emergency possession order, the police record that reflected no injuries, no arrest, and a letter that asked USCIS to adjudicate the I-130 on the merits of a marriage that existed until it turned into strategy. He didn't write villain. He didn't write victim. He wrote, "We decline to participate further in a narrative that has been materially impeached by contemporaneous video evidence." 2 weeks later, a notice of intent to deny arrived for the joint petition. The letter was 7 pages of arid bureaucratese, but one paragraph had weather. "The service has concerns regarding the credibility of the marital relationship due to inconsistent testimony and indications of staged evidentiary submissions." They cited the police call, the RFE answers that contradicted earlier statements, and video evidence provided by petitioner. 30 days to rebut. Karp sent a 1-page letter, "We will not rebut. Kindly adjudicate." If fraud findings are issued, we request that they attach to no party lightly. Around the same time, the Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission sent Victor a letter that began inquiry and ended, "Please provide your records of communications staging of evidence." We knew because a copy arrived to CARP as complainant's counsel. I hadn't filed a bar complaint. I'd sent FDNS a packet that included his WhatsApp message. "Good," under the cop card photo. FDNS, it seemed, had shared with someone wearing a different badge. There were texts I had to forward to CARP and then erase from my brain. A mutual friend, Lucia, sent, "I'm sorry," then "Don't hate me," then a screenshot of Victor messaging her for a more candid affidavit describing my temper episodes. She had drafted one with 3 precise lines, they argue. "He does not isolate. I have never seen violence." He'd replied, "Too clean." She sent me the thread because she was done being a prop. We added it to the pile. Maya emailed through counsel to retrieve a box of sheet music and the red coat. CARP scheduled a time and had a runner packet under supervision. I wrote a stupid note and didn't include it. "Take the coat. I don't want to be angry at the color." USCIS denied the joint I-130. The letter was simple, not spiteful, insufficient evidence of good faith marriage when considered with negative credibility indicators. There was no formal fraud finding attached, which matters because some letters tattoo you in ways you don't outgrow. CARP high-fived the air because lawyers from Chicago do joy like that. A month later, a friend in removal defense told CARP that Maya had indeed filed a VAWA self-petition confidential, sealed. I would never see it. What I did see was a notice to appear, served months later, DHS charging her as removable upon denial of adjustment. She and Victor could fight for cancellation, voluntary departure, or seek some other path. I watched that news arrive in my inbox like a weather alert and felt nothing like victory, just fatigue and the sense that a machine had finally recognized it had been fed the wrong paper. Victor's disciplinary inquiry grew teeth. Someone, maybe FDNS, maybe an old client, had also complained about counseling clients to engineer police contact. The ARDC asked for records, timestamps, copies of incident lists. He wrote a reply that I did not see, but the months later outcome trickled back through lawyer gossip, a public reprimand for unprofessional communications tending to encourage the manufacture of evidence. He kept his license. He changed his website. He changed his website. He changed his website. He took down the blog post about how to prepare for intrusive interviews and replaced it with "Navigating Trauma Compassionately," which read like something he'd carved into a wall he helped build. The divorce was quiet and procedural, which is how I wanted it. We mediated with a woman who speaks fluent Midwest. What do you actually care about, Dan? I cared about the apartment until I didn't. I cared about my name on 0 petitions not written by me. We split the savings down to the penny. I let her keep the fancy kettle because I didn't want to fight over how water boils. When the judgment came through, dissolution granted, no maintenance, each bears own fees. I read it at the kitchen table and then went for a walk in air that felt new. There were small karmas I did not order. Victor's Google reviews acquired a handful of paragraphs that used verbs like guided and coached in a tone that wasn't gratitude. A violinist from Maya's old ensemble wrote me a quick, kind DM. She's staying with a cousin for now, and then another one months later. She's in Toronto, trying for an artist residency. Canada felt like an ending written by a bureaucrat with a sense of humor. Adjacent, polite, colder. My mother asked if I would have married Maya if there had been no visas. I told her the truth that hurts less if you say it like a test result. Yes, I would have. I did not marry a document. I married a person under a clock. The clock won. I kept the plant. It likes the bathroom. I replaced the coffee table with one that doesn't have corners I recognize. I put a small camera on a shelf for a month and then took it down because my nervous system learned the difference between safety and surveillance. I went to therapy and said sentences I didn't know were in me, like, "I am not a villain or a victim. I am a witness who loves nouns." When USCIS's fraud unit called 6 months later to ask one last time if I wished to submit anything further before they closed their file, I said no, thank you, and then, because I am who I am, emailed Harper a 2-line note. "I appreciate your steadiness." The system felt like it was listening. She wrote back a single sentence, "We try." One evening in late fall, I ran into Lucia at a street festival near Damon. She hugged me like sorrow and relief had learned to share a body. "She asked me to write you," Lucia said. "I told her letters only make messes when you're sweeping." We ate empanadas on a curb. A band did a cover of a song Maya used to roll her eyes at. I didn't cry, I didn't smile. I ate and listened and felt something like muscle grow back. The last ripple came on a Tuesday when my building's doorman handed me an envelope with Canadian postage. No return address, just my name in a hand I knew too well. I stood in the lobby and waited. Then I took it upstairs and put it in a drawer with the cop card and the denial letter in the USB and wrote on the front in Sharpie, "Do not narrate." 2 weeks later, I threw it away. The sound the trash bag made when it slid down the chute was both too loud and exactly right. What did I learn? That paperwork can be weapon or shelter. That cameras are not courage, but they are sometimes kindness. That a law written to save someone from a bruise can, in clumsy hands, be used to draw one that doesn't exist. That I can love without enrolling in someone else's strategy. That I can leave without calling names. That I can rebuild with a table that doesn't lie. If you're in a story where rooms start to feel staged and lists about you appear on desks, believe your eyes faster than I did. Document, but don't perform. Ask for adults, judges, fraud officers, boring lawyers who don't smile. They won't give you a parade. They'll give you a record. Sometimes that's the same thing as mercy. Tell me your take. Would you have played along and hoped the interview blessed you both? Or killed the scene with a time lapse and let the chips fall where they told the truth? Would you have emailed the bar about Victor? Or kept your head down and just moved on? Would you have opened the letter from Toronto? Or done what I did and let the chute speak? If this kept you listening, drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like so it finds the next person staring at a coffee table turned sideways and wondering if they're in a marriage or a mood board. Subscribe for more long, messy, true-feeling stories where the twist isn't a screaming courthouse fight, it's a time lapse, a bar inquiry, and a man who learned to be a witness without making himself the hero.